I know we're missing Rick and Lozelle. Do we have enough to get started, or are we? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we have 4 staff members?
We have 10 committee. So,
2, 3. I'm trying to count little panes on the window. Oh, no, we have 5 staff. Okay, and then 5. We should be able to go, right? We're okay. Then I will call this session back from adjourn. No, we didn't adjourn it. We recessed. So we're coming back from recess. We had fun on the playground. Tonight, before we leap in, I wanted to explain something. And those of you who've been through lots of budget meetings, you can just sip your tea or whatever. But tonight we're doing a public hearing as a part of it. And that public hearing is specifically about state shared revenues. And so I'll adjourn that meeting for the hearing, and then we'll get the staff report from Rob on state revenues, and then call for discussion, public comment. The public comment during that and the discussion during that is all about only that staff report, nothing about the budget or funds or any of that. Then we vote, and then we close that, and then we'll get back to doing the budget. But this is required in order for us to make a recommendation to council. They have to say yes to it in order for us to get the money from the state of Oregon. So it's a kind of a funny formal thing right in the middle of our deliberation of budget. And I thought I'd just call it out. Any questions before we leap in? Solomon remembers this from last year. Solomon, you have a new haircut or new glasses, something. Okay. And on that note, Sue, can we have the roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Solomon Allen.
Present.
Greg Minahan.
Muted.
Present.
Timothy Carpenter.
Present.
Beth Koshman.
We're missing
Molly Olson.
present.
Lozelle Mathai is going to be absent this evening. Brad Sitton.
Here.
Rick Rogers will be absent this evening. Denise Bacon.
Here.
Bryce Cofield.
So we're missing Bryce as well.
Stephanie Finley.
Here.
Julia Martinez Plancarte.
Present.
Elise Yarnell Holloman.
Here.
Mike McBride.
Here.
Well, it looks like you have a quorum, Molly.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, the agenda tonight, before we move to our special hearing, we do have a call for public comment. I believe we have one, and tell us if we have more, Sue.
Well, we have 2. I'll be reading a letter that was submitted from someone who can't attend tonight, but I'm going to bring Sarah Greider across, and let's make sure we got her. Hi, Sarah. If you're ready to go, I'll start the timer.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Sarah Greider, and I work with Cara DeViti, and we help run the Newberg Emergency Shelter. We expanded in January of 2021 to become a 365 year low barrier shelter. And what that means is that we're available for anyone who needs assistance with overnight housing in Newberg. We take families, we take single folks, people with their dogs off the street. And I feel like we've made a big difference in the houseless community in Newberg. With that expansion, though, came a lot more needs for the operation of the shelter. For example, the number of volunteers we require, background checks, amount of money and time we spend with the upkeep of the house. We've been working really hard with as many community partners as possible, like the Community Wellness Collective, to source some of these things. But there are just some things that we need help with financial assistance to cover, like the background checks. And so we would like to ask the city of Newberg for a generous donation of $2,500 to assist in background checks so that we can continue this service for our community. Since it is available to pretty much anyone who finds themselves in the predicament of needing a place to stay, we feel like it also keeps folks off the streets. It decreases the need of policing services and all kinds of other issues through the city we're helping out with. So again, we would like to ask for a generous donation from the city of $2,500 to continue this resource. We thank you for your time and support of the shelter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I think Sue's managing the magic clock. There we go.
Sorry, I couldn't get to shut down too many things on my screen. Okay, Molly, you ready for me for the letter?
Yes.
Okay. This letter is from Taste Newberg, addressed to the City Council, dated March 11th, 2021. Dear Mayor Rogers and members of Newberg City Council, support the Chamber with non-tourism funds. Taste Newberg believes the Chehalem Valley Chamber of Commerce provides a valuable service to the business community, and we encourage the City Council to support their organization as they have experienced declining revenues during the pandemic. That said, we question the value of diverting scarce transient lodging tax revenue from tourism marketing to supporting a physical visitor center that has limited traffic and questionable ability to increase future TLT funds. The declining value of a physical visitor center in 2021. Prior to the pandemic, Newberg's Visitor Center historically provided a useful service for a relatively small number of tourists. The Chamber reported 12.5 visitors a day pre-pandemic, 4,570 for 2018-19, and their executive director shared in the October 19th, 2020 council meeting that their annual number was inflated because their door counter included staff and locals on chamber business. While there will always be a small number of visitors who would utilize a physical center, like Minville's Visitor Center is operated by their chamber with no city fiscal support, it is obvious that our increasingly digital society will be far more likely to use a mobile phone or computer to access travel information. Further, the management team of the Allison Inn and Spa, which generates roughly 70% of Newberg's TLT revenue, share that their guests do not use the physical visitor center, but instead use their concierge team or online resources. Our request: invest TLT funds where they are likely to generate ROI. The City of Newberg relies upon TLT funds to supplement its general budget. In pre-pandemic 2018-19, the city received $1.1 million in TLT funds, 65% of which was used for general budget purposes. It is in the city's financial interest to see an increase in TLT funds, which is only accomplished by increasing overnight stays in Newberg. We propose that the remaining 35% of TLT funds should be spent not on a physical visitor center for a small number of visitors who have already found us, but on marketing the city to prospective visitors who would visit our city, stay in our hotels, and increase our revenues. Taste Newberg has already created an impressive travel website and generated significant media attention for our city. Even as the travel industry is beginning to rebound, Taste Newberg needs adequate funds to build awareness and attract visitors to our city. Regardless of your decision, we are committed to working with the Chamber to serve both visitors and local businesses. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Dennis Lewis on behalf of the Taste Newberg Board of Directors.
Thank you, Sue. Any other public comment?
No, we have not received any other public comment for this evening.
Okay, so we'll close public comment. And the information from Sarah will be in the minutes, and the letter we will post with minutes. Is that how we'll do that, Sue? Yep.
I can post it on the website tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. All right. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Sue, for reading that, because I know they were unable to attend tonight or Thursday. Okay, as we move into the next part of our meeting, we will actually move into the state revenue sharing that I talked about initially. And so I would like to call to order, I'm going to read this so I do it right, a public hearing to discuss the staff report on the state revenue sharing. And the process here is that we will go through that, starting with a declaration of any conflicts of interest or abstentions from council or the budget committee members. So does anyone wish to declare any conflict of interest or need to abstain from voting on this matter? Okay, hearing none. Does anyone have any questions on that? I know we have new. Nope, okay. Then if I could ask Rob to proceed with the staff report? Or Dan, I think it's Rob, yeah, good.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Brief staff presentation this evening with respect to state shared revenues. As required under ORS, the city needs to go through this formal process and public process to allow for public input into the use of state shared revenue funds in order to receive those funds from the state. So the budget committee will go through this process, and then in follow-up on budget adoption, a resolution will be put in front of council for their action as well. Just in quick summary, in terms of, so what are state shared revenues? So those consist of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different categories of revenue that the city currently receives and expects to continue to receive. The liquor tax is the first one that I'd like to speak to, and liquor tax is allocated to the city on a it's kind of a complex formula driven allocation, but there's 14% of the state's receipts are allocated to municipalities based on this formula. The other 20% is, or another 20% is allocated based on per capita to cities. These amounts are unrestricted in terms of their use by the city. And the total expected to receive, or the total budgeted to be received in fiscal year 21-22 by the city for liquor tax is approximately $780,000. Cigarette tax, again, an unrestricted revenue, again, allocated on a per capita allocation by the state. The city expects to receive $48,000. In fiscal year 21-22. And you can find these amounts on page 31 of your budget document under general fund revenues. The marijuana tax, 10% of the net state revenues is allocated 75% of that amount on a per capita basis and 25% on a ratio of city licenses to total state licenses. The amount budgeted for fiscal year 21-22, again found on page 31, is $185,000. So those are the unrestricted amounts. These next two are restricted amounts. The gas tax is allocated again on a per capita allocation by the state, and the city has budgeted $1.9 million to be received in fiscal year 21-22, and you can find that amount on page 87 in the street fund. And those amounts are restricted to construction and maintenance of roads and streets, as well as a small portion of that has to be allocated to other modes of transportation, typically trails, bikeways, sidewalks, etc. And then the final state shared revenue is the 911 excise tax. And again, allocated on a per capita basis of cities and counties to 911 centers. And the city receives roughly $297,000 on behalf of Newberg and Dundee for the operation of our comm center. And, there was some conversation about that at our last meeting. You can find that on page 69 of your budget document. And those amounts are restricted to emergency communications operations. I'd be happy to entertain any questions from the budget committee at this point.
You have any questions? Silence.
Great. Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you for conclusion of the public, or to take public input and conclusion of the public hearing.
Right. Now we move to public testimony. Sue, do we have any public testimony about the state shared revenues?
Madam Chair, no one has registered to speak on public comment for this hearing tonight.
Thank you. All right, then, we can ask for a recommendation from staff, which I think is how you formally tell us what the resolution you'd like us to vote on is, Rob.
Staff recommends that the budget committee recommend the budgeted state shared revenues for the purposes as explained to the city council for adoption in the budget.
Thank you. Deliberation from the committee on that resolution. Such silence tonight. Thank you for those of you who leave your video on, so I know you haven't all left. And so now we get to a point where we get to vote. All those, I guess I have to ask for a resolution from someone on the committee. Sorry. Would anyone care to make a resolution with respect to what Rob said? Come on, you experienced. Thank you, Mike.
I move that we go ahead and accept the resolution proposed by the way Rob spoke it or explained it out.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jules. One kind thing staff can do for this committee, because we are not experienced at writing quickly enough to capture what you said, is if you do want to propose a resolution to us, if you write it out for us and put it on a PowerPoint, we will even read it. We're that good. Okay. All those.
My apologies.
No. It's all just learning experience every day. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed also say aye. Those opposed? None opposed. So we pass that resolution and we can close this hearing. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh my God. All right, now back to the budget. That was fun and exciting. Before we hop in where we left off, in your packet, you will see that the city has been working on answering some of the questions that have come up. I know, Greg, they're still working on the email that you sent and kind of parsing it. When we ask questions, if we can summarize, there's usually a lot of, here's what I'm trying to say around the question, but then if you can summarize what your question is, that'll make it faster for staff to decode and actually answer what you were really asking. So that's a request, if we can try and be as clear as possible in what we're asking. We will take time Thursday, because I want to continue to plow through the budget, but we will take time Thursday to go back and revisit these and any questions that come up tonight, because the deliberation on the whole budget is best done when you've seen the whole budget. And also, honestly, staff's working to try and make sure they give you detailed answers on the stuff you asked. So is that acceptable to you guys? Awesome, thanks. I see head nodding. Good, all right. So the next step on the agenda is to continue the presentation of the budget and funds. And we left off with Dan, with you.
I think it's Kezia is up next with HR. If that's
Excellent.
if everyone was done with me, and ready to have her on the hot seat.
Hot seat? No, maybe. All
Warm
right.
seat.
Welcome, Kezia. Please tell us about HR.
Thank you. Good evening. Kezia Warner, Assistant City Manager. And I'll just talk a little bit about HR and HR's budget. The HR department staffing level in the current year has been approximately 1.25 FTE. However, this month we've been able to bring on temporary part-time assistants to gain capacity, and now we're currently operating with approximately 1.75 FTE for the next few months. But starting next fiscal year, the staffing plan will include a new HR manager position, our existing part-time project specialist, and approximately 30% of my time. The staffing level of roughly 2.0 FTE for this unit is in line with HR industry standards, which is one HR professional per 70 employees in an organization. The fiscal year 21-22 proposed budget for HR is $424,000, which reflects a 39% increase from the current fiscal year approved budget. The changes include increased personal services budget to reflect the HR director position, which was not appropriately budgeted in the current fiscal year, so we're correcting that, and an increase in the professional services line to accommodate the costs for HR software that automates hiring and recruiting, and employee online training and performance evaluation and management. The HR department is responsible for recruiting, hiring, onboarding, separations and terminations, employee performance and training, pension program management, benefits administration, labor negotiations with the city's 2 collective bargaining units, employee leaves of all kinds that include workers' comp, COVID leave, FMLA, and a host of other employee services. And I just would like to mention a little bit about COVID. COVID has created a significant workload, not just in HR, but through the entire city. But in HR, we've had to make a lot of adjustments and accommodations related to policy, operations, compliance to state and federal restrictions in the workplace, and assisting our employees with COVID exposure leaves and remote work arrangements. We anticipate the need throughout most, if not all, of fiscal year 21-22 to continue to respond to demands and effects of COVID. We will continue to support our employees and adjust our operations as the risk levels and related restrictions change. Regarding workload trends, demands on our city's HR staff has been significantly higher than prior years. The COVID-related workloads, which I just discussed, that's a new body of work. But additionally, we expect to see approximately 50 employee recruitments in this fiscal year, and that's nearly double that of prior years. The recruitments are filling the gaps created by employee separations due to retirements, natural attrition, job changes, and employee decisions that really have been related to COVID. A lot of people have made different decisions about, what they want to be doing with their time and their lives. So we additionally have experienced a larger number of failed recruitments this year, in which the recruitment efforts did not result in hiring a successful candidate from the process. We're working to understand the reasons for this, but we know that the competitive market in our region for certain job classifications has a hand to play in that, and that sometimes our candidates that are very well qualified and our top candidates will go to the highest paying entities in our region. So we're still trying to parse out some of the reasons that we are not being successful in securing our candidates and doing the analysis on that. But an exciting change for this next fiscal year is that we're launching a new employee performance evaluation software module, which is a Neogov system module. It's called Perform, and it will support our hiring and recruitment process, as well as allow for us to do online performance evaluations. The module enables the city to conduct the performance evaluations with our employees electronically, and it creates efficiencies in our now paper-driven process. Because it's easy to use, we expect to save time as well as produce more meaningful performance evaluation experiences for supervisors and employees. So I actually am presenting on that to council next Monday, so I'll be talking much more about that module. But in the interest of time, I'll wrap up, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Nope. Thank you, Kezia.
You got one. Solomon.
Sorry. Solomon, you have to come off mute and yell.
So just curious, so that Neogov is not then projected in the budget at this point?
It
Is that
has been, it has been built into the budget.
Oh, okay. What line is that on?
That is under our professional services, which is it's right above legal expenses.
So just curious then, what was the increase last year in that same line item?
It was Neogov. We
Was
were
that?
we've been adding modules piece by piece and building it out slowly. So we actually brought on the recruitment module first. And so, sort of trying to use that to onboard or to get more applicants, and that connects to governmentjobs.com. So
Okay, perfect.
it's the same system. It's just we're building it out.
Is that also New Day then? Is that the same?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What is
I think
the
Okay.
That's not what I'm familiar with. You said New Day.
I think
There's-
that's what Oregon Gov Jobs uses. That's why I was curious.
They use, I think, Workday.
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 Yeah,
No.
not the same, different.
Okay.
Yeah, they're different systems. Any other questions?
All right,
Thank you.
good. All right. And next, our own city recorder.
Yeah,
Dan, do you do
think
that?
I will take that one, and Sue will pop her head in the screen and scold me if I get it wrong. But I will try to also hit the high points here. Yep, see. Sue helps us obviously manage a lot of these meetings and is clerk to the council and sort of support level of kind of meeting management, meeting oversight, cracking whips, poking heads and screens, things like that. But she also is, as the city recorder, the sort of person. Kezia mentioned trying to get away from paper. Sue's also trying to help us manage our paper and to, in some ways, get away from paper as well. So part of her responsibilities are managing the records of the city, both the historical and, kind of helping departments manage their own records by training records coordinators in each department and helping to manage those retention schedules and processes. And you may know that we have an archives building sort of somewhat across the street. I guess you would say maybe across the alleyway from City Hall. And this last year, using some of the CARES Act funding and Sue's suggestion, we were actually able to build out some office space in that records office. And so I want to thank her for the suggestion and helping kind of move that project along, because now we have 4 COVID safe offices back there adjacent to City Hall. And in part that it helps by getting rid of some paper in the process. Sue's budget is not, and I guess I shouldn't call it Sue's budget. The city recorder's budget is largely not changed in personnel area because it really captures one person. Although I think what we are looking to do in a revision is to augment her budget slightly. We've brought over our part-time court clerk who is bilingual and able to provide her some additional hours, that individual some additional hours, and also add a bilingual component to our records and our a backup to Sue and someone who's bilingual in meeting management, those kinds of things as well. So I think we'll probably be adding some hours into that as we sort of get into the next iteration. And I'm sorry, I don't have the number for that right now, but I will say that we've talked about it and we want to make sure we reflect what we've started to do already, which is to use some of that individual's time. What is in the budget and probably notable to those who look for variances in line items is the professional services line item has grown. And some of this is statutory requirements and some of this is more discretionary, but it does include in the professional services line item a transcriptionist, someone who will help us with our creating records. So we've got times there for an individual who does the transcription of meetings. We've published the code on an annual basis through a service and have to pay for that service. So there is money in there, and we've actually increased the amount because we have new legal representation and an aspiration to do some code revisions on a more frequent basis. And so assume that we would need to pay for that. Oregon Records Management System licensing, so access to ORMS, which will help us to digitize files and have the place to put them. And that's a state shared service. It's a software as a service model. And so, you'd essentially buy a license and have the ability to put information on there. And that should save us some space for more offices if we're able to get rid of some paper in the process. We've got shredding in there, which is always fun. And we've also got agenda management software. So running the meetings, or at least posting the information on the meetings and doing the backup, with the service that we use to create the agendas and to run city council and planning commission is Granicus. And so we have that software package in the budget as well. And then lastly, the required thing, which is legislative redistricting, which is driven by the census, which is delayed, which is a big bubble of we're not sure. And so Sue's gotten an estimate. We've gotten an estimate as to how much we think that the professional services will cost, but we are also not sure when that information will come forward and when we'll need to spend that money. And some of that budget is also variable based on the assumption that City Council would want us to do some public engagement on the process. And so we've put an amount, a plug number in there for that as well. So that is the professional services total, and I can do line items if folks would like, but those are the services that are in there.
Okay, questions on the recording, city recording? Yes, Solomon. Don't be shy. Come off mute.
Just curious, what will impact, I guess, when the census comes out, will impact the change in price there?
So what we've budgeted is, I don't know that we'll have, we will have to see what the data looks like and the timing. So in terms of the price, what we got was a quote for essentially the base analysis is what the quote was. So we're not sure if we would want or need more of that individual's time. So the price could go up from there. So the quote of her time would be somewhat variable depending on complexity. And then in terms of the requirement for engagement or desire for engagement from the city council, that could move the number up and down. But I think we've got enough money set aside. We have $5,000 for each of those two items. So $10,000 in total for that.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll move on to the.
You got one more from Mike, it looks like. Sorry.
Oh, Mike, sorry. It's like
put your head down and.
I put my 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
So in the professional services, the person that you would hire to, or that you would have help put in the census information, is that somebody? Did I hear you say it's somebody from outside the city that would be coming in to do that? Or is there somebody within the city? Is it just a matter of inputting information into the system? Or is it a little more complicated?
It's a little more complicated. There's analysis that goes along with it in terms of your reapportioning and deciding how to do that. And, I think there's a fair amount of technical knowledge that when it comes to that. So I don't know, Sue, if you want to add some detail there.
Hey, Mike. I don't know if you were on council the last time they redistricted. So redistricting in Newberg determines where a city councilor will live. The redistricting, the city had wards long time ago. And then they had a charter amendment in 1996 in which they chose to have districts. So the city's redistricted twice since then. And 20 years ago, they used the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. And the quote in your budget is from Leslie Hegewald, who still happens to be at the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. And then 10 years ago, we used Portland State University. So those are the two people that basically are agencies that have GIS specialists. Legislative redistricting is very much a specialty. What we are waiting for is the release of what is known as census block data. This has been in the news recently, and in Oregon, generally they release it April 1st, and they are supposed to then have the redistricting maps done at the state level by July 1. So the Supreme Court for Oregon has given the state legislature an extension until September 21st or 27th to get it done. If they don't get it done, then it defaults to the Secretary of State's office. So we have to wait for that to be finished. We have to wait for the state to finish and the counties to finish, and then we have to wait for a directive from the Secretary of State's office, giving cities the go-ahead, and this is the outline. One of the elements that is unknown is how much community outreach do you want to do? Census block data, some of it is pretty codified in federal and state law. One that is not is communities of common interest. Only the community can determine what is a community of common interest and where to draw the lines. Then there's a number of statistical things that can only go up by so much or down by so much. So that's why Leslie Hegewald from Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments gave me a baseline of 5,000. She didn't have a good estimate at the time because they were switching directors. And so it's very much a ballpark estimate. That's for the base analysis and initial maps. If the council were to request additional analyses or additional mapping scenarios, so last time they did this, the council requested 6. So Leslie's base quote is based on 3. So if the council were to request additional, then it's an additional per hour. They only provide the technical support. If you want to know what the community thinks, then that would depend upon the council saying, who do you want to ask to define these elements? So I hate to be vague, and I hope I don't sound too confused. I did a lot of research for the last 2 years on this to find it out. And the council will be getting a memo in July, and I'll be giving a presentation in August. We had scheduled that for April, but then the data got held up, so we put it off. I hope that answered your question, Mike.
That was a good tutorial.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? This time I'm staring at the screen until everyone shakes their head no. Mike already got one. Okay. Then we're on to community engagement.
Yeah,
And that's Dan again.
That's Dan again. So community engagement provides information from the city to the community and also helps us with gathering information from residents. So trying to not just push information, but we're trying to pull and get more involved and really get folks to give us feedback such that we can improve services. And so we have one individual currently who does that. She does a great job, but also it's a great load. We've got a lot of things that we're doing in the city. Even in COVID, we had a lot of activity, and there are both some statutory requirements to communicate, as it were, or to share information, and then there's my desire, like I said, to pull from folks, like, tell me what you want. And so we're trying to augment the service. And so, as I think has been discussed a couple times now, asking to increase the staff count to add another community engagement specialist. And the intent would be to promote the current individual to supervise the newly added community engagement specialist. And to also try to augment the role of the incumbent to more of a strategic communications role, such that she's able to help in planning, which is something we're doing now through a contract that we have with Slate Communications, which is part of our professional services line item. But really trying to augment the work that we have maybe traditionally done in communication, just post information and hope that people are seeing it, and really try to identify more the messages, the types of things, the channels, the streams, if you will, of places that people gather their content, and to be more, I guess, to diversify the ways that we're communicating, because certainly not everyone consumes their information in the same way. So there's a lot to be done, and a lot of need within the departments for various aspects of that to help. So the personnel administrative salaries area is changed because of that additional position. As was said before, the hope is to hire a bilingual individual who can help us do Latinx outreach and really do relationship building in that sector of the community. Somebody who can also do the tactile communications too. So, I think that that person exists, and I guess, based on the failed recruitments conversation earlier, I'm hopeful that this one will fall into that category. That is our plan with personnel services. The other items, there is an item in, more or less, the contractual services do not change, but the contractual involves archives social, which is a way that we keep records of the the various social media streams that we use, and have the public record maintained. That's a service we've used for a while, as you can tell, based on the consistency in that number. The maintenance agreements is website hosting, professional services. This last year in 2020 and 2021 has been working with Slate primarily, trying to do branding guide.
Oops.
Did I drop off? No?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, sorry. I'm sitting in my office, so
That was a
I must
budget
have the
freeze.
best
Don't worry about it.
possible. I probably have the best possible internet, right? And so I'm not sure what was missed, but just running through the professional services items. So this last year, working with Slate to do communications plan, brand guidelines, strategy. They did a discovery report, essentially an audit of some of the ways that we communicate and what the community is looking for, talk to stakeholders internally and externally. The focus has been internal and external. So we are trying to do better in communicating with our staff as well, so they have the information to be able to provide information out to the community when they're asked, but also the collateral materials that we can do better with, just again, identifying streams and that sort of thing. One item that has not been hit in that current year amount is using some of the Slate time to augment our photo library and to build out some additional images that we can use in promotional materials. For the next year, the 25,000 includes an annual report, which is something that we did at the end of the calendar year this last year. A new logo for the library, apparently, and so excited to see what that looks like, I guess. The support services for our communication specialist, and that includes newsletter development and launch. And that was something that Lacey brought to council a few weeks ago, talking about welcome for residents and other materials that can augment our reach to the community. Additional photos and things like that. And then we did include funding for translation services, which has become an ongoing need. And presume that if we're successful with our recruitment, maybe we would be able to move that amount depending on our need for translation services. So that is communications, community engagement.
Questions? Solomon.
Just curious on the library logo. Is there any way, I feel like it might tie into community engagement to maybe make that a community-wide contest of sorts? I don't know how much it's going to cost to have somebody create that. It seems like it wouldn't be explicitly cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got when I got here, I think there was an interest in creating a Newberg flag. And I will say that also seems like one of those things we can put out to a contest. And I will say that we've not done a flag, best I can tell. And so, I mean, I say that only to say that I'm not sure it's as easy as putting it out, a call to the community and getting a quality product or getting a product in general. But the quote that is in the budget, we plan to spend about $3,000 on the logo. So we'll see, I guess. It certainly is an option, I guess, to put it out to the community and see if there's talented folks out there that want to do the library logo.
So Dan, I had a question if no one else has one. As chair, you're supposed to be polite and let everyone else go first. So anybody else? Going once, twice, thrice. Okay. You mentioned that bringing on a second person would allow the current individual to kind of move to more strategic planning like you use Slate for now. So would we see a reduction in the Slate budget as Lacey picks up that role, or are you using it for different things?
I think you probably would. It's hard to say. I think the professional services, the 25,000 was entirely Slate this last year. I think that based on what she's got planned here, it's not all being used for Slate. Like they would not provide the translation services, for instance, and some of those things. So I think it's safe to say that we're possibly weaning ourselves off. And knowing the folks at Slate, their model is to try to teach us how to fish. And so I think the idea of having them be consultative and help would be nice to keep, but not probably at the level that we budgeted last year.
Okay, and the only second comment is that Taste Newberg has managed to hire someone who's a really good photographer. And if you watch their Instagram, they're basically working their way through all the businesses in the city. They do something new, and the photos are awesome. He has a drone that he flew over the market last year that was the best promotional material for the Wednesday market that we'd seen. So if that source is being used by the city, that's smart because you're already funding them. So I mean, TLT funds them, but yes, it'd be.
So you're saying I can have all those photos?
No, but don't be shy. Go knock on the door. They obviously want to talk to you about the money that you give out now. So you have a great request.
Gotcha.
Anything else for community engagement? Okay. Rob, finance and utility billing.
Great. Thanks, Molly. So the finance department, including utility billing, really is focused on improving their level of customer service to the operating departments and programs, as well as our customers outside of City Hall and outside those departments. We are in the process, I guess, this budget reflects, a process for implementing a number of the recommendations that were made as a result of the finance department analysis and review that was completed a month or so ago, including looking at some looking at the current financial software needs of the city as a first step to improving that tool, making a better tool or an improved tool available to staff. And then finally, just improving access to financial information within the city, more timely, making sure it's accurate, making sure that we get reports to council and to the operating departments in time to support decisions and to support those strategic moves that need to be made. Just a few kind of summary level comments about the budget itself. Personal services in the finance department reflects the restructuring of the finance group within support services. The previous positions for finance director and assistant finance director have been repurposed, reclassified. I'm not sure what the proper term is. Kezia and HR will correct me if I misspeak, but They've been repurposed to a finance manager position that will report directly to the assistant city manager and in turn supervise the staff of the finance department, including accounts payable, payroll, the senior accountant, and utility billing. Currently, the municipal court is structured under the finance director, but that will switch in the reorganization to report directly to the assistant city manager. So that's what is reflected in those adjustments in personal services. Materials and services, the big change there is in professional services, and that reflects the completion of, well, my contract primarily. Marina and Company will complete their contract with the city in June, and so that doesn't carry over into the 21-22 fiscal year. And utility billing is relatively constant, consistent with the 2021 expected amounts to be expended. There's not much more to say than that, other than I do want to take a quick opportunity to really plug the team in finance. They have done a tremendous job of kind of holding it together and stepping up in this transition period. I couldn't ask for a better team to help get stuff done and keep the wheels on. We're currently working with a temp who did a great job of kind of putting payroll together in the last couple of days and made my review pretty painless. We're not all the way there yet, but we will be tomorrow. And Dan Coiler has stepped up into this kind of interim finance manager role. That dude's wearing a lot of hats right now, and he's trying to do that job and keep his senior accountant things moving, and has been incredibly helpful. So all of that whole team, I just want to really say thank you on behalf of myself and the leadership team, because there's a lot of stuff that wouldn't get done if they weren't really pulling their weight. Are there any questions with respect to the finance budget? Great.
Okay. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we missed one in Fund 31. I was just going through my book and checking. Did we already discuss the economic health? Because it's not
but I
on
think
my agenda, but it's one of them.
I think we'll probably just talk about it, sum it up into the economic development fund conversation, if that's all right.
When we get there? No, that's fine. As long as it
There's
gets
all
covered.
that's in there is the salary portion of the salary.
Okay.
And actually, Molly, I apologize for that. The materials and services that are there is an oversight on our part. Those amounts will come out of the budget. We've moved that position over into Fund 14, which I think is what Dan was referring to. So there really isn't anything budgeted in or there won't be anything budgeted in Fund 31 for economic health for next year.
Okay. And will you be, last year we had a 3-ring binder so that when you republished part of the budget, we could insert the pages. What are you guys doing to kind of update us at the end of all this fun?
That's a really excellent question, and we'll let you know as soon as
Get back to me on that. Yeah.
We should probably think about that.
That's an awesome thing. I love the lightness of this and the fact that I can easily bring it with me for copious study. All right, then we go to IT. Is that Kezia?
Yep.
Hello, everybody, again. I'll be covering information technology, and I'll start off by just talking about staffing levels. So currently, we've got 6 FTE in the IT unit. It includes 2 systems administrators, 1 administrative assistant, 1 information tech, 1 network administrator, and 1 director. The information technology group has been structured in this way in the current year, but starting in next fiscal year, the group will be led by an IT manager that we'll be recruiting for. And the current IT director will be taking over as the Public Safety Technology Services Manager for the city. So it will look a little bit different. The fiscal year 21-22 proposed budget for the IT group is 1.16 million, which is a decrease of 9% from the current year adopted budget. The change reflects moving the IT manager to the police department budget, and it shows a commensurate increase in personal services budget in police. Another budget change from prior year is the increase of $36,000 in capital outlay technology replacement costs, which I'll talk about in a few minutes a little bit more. The IT unit manages the city's information security, networks, server, hardware, software, and technology applications used across the city. The department responsibilities include data center operations, server and storage infrastructure, network infrastructure, network security, server and desktop operating systems, email, virtualization platforms, which is desktop and server, remote access, database systems management, and general use applications such as Microsoft Office Suite and Adobe. A consistent theme in IT has been the need to focus greater resources on asset maintenance and replacement, as many of our systems and technology equipment needs to be upgraded or replaced. We're evaluating the ways that we can accomplish this priority work in the next fiscal year and in the out years. One way that we can plan for future needs is through an asset replacement strategic plan. And we will identify and prioritize asset replacement and new investments, and we'll bring the request forward annually during the budget process. And another theme that kind of has been touched on so far, but that's emerged in our past 13 months with COVID, is really the need for us to provide our employees with robust remote working technologies and provide the public with virtual access to our programs. It's created, as I mentioned before, significant new bodies of work. And we know that many of the systems we've developed, they're working in the short term, but we also need to focus efforts and develop more flexible and sustainable long-term technology strategies around these solutions. This will require technology investments to upgrade systems and equipment that were never intended for the virtual environment, and that we expect to operate, in similar ways in foreseeable future. So those are just a few things I wanted to mention about the IT group, and take any questions that the committee may have.
So Kezia, the move to a virtual or remote work introduced a bunch of laptops where before everyone had virtualized desktops. Will you continue the use of that and sustain that? Or is that just for COVID? Do you know?
Well, I think that we're figuring out how we're going to, still continue to adopt some of the efficiencies that we've gained through doing remote work. And so I think that we will continue some of the practices. It will look different when we can have more people working in a building at the same time. So we may have, the hybrid work plan. But frankly, Dan and myself and the leadership team need to hammer out the details of what that's going to look like, as most municipal organizations right now are kind of looking at that re-entry plan. So we'll take some pages out of other jurisdictions' playbooks that have already, sort of created their plans, and we'll see what will work for us probably. We don't have to invent the wheel. But I do think that we'll be continuing some of our practices that make sense for us.
Okay, the reason I bring it up is that increased number of assets to take care of, and they're different. People do amazing things with laptops that they never do with their desktop. Used to be in IT, so have some knowledge of this. Last year, Dave came forward with a list of equipment that was truly on the edge of not being able to be maintained. are you still working to that list when you talked about equipment replacement?
We have, we've discussed internally about the needs for replacement. And so I think that's probably that list that you're referring to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So capital for that, we haven't managed assets well, as you're saying, and that we're trying to get ahead of that. Is there any surprises? I guess what I'm trying to tactfully ask is there a big chunk of capital that you're going to need to spend because some, $30,000 server dies?
Well, right now, we are looking at the requests that had been put forward by IT.
Mhm.
And so it really is the matter of criticality and the likelihood of failure. Those are the evaluation, methodologies that we'll use. But currently in the budget, there is a little bit of extra capital dollars for IT. But, I do think, to your point, we could probably resurrect that list as part of the response if you're looking for that as part of the question answer.
Yeah, more awareness of it. You're new in this role, and so it's a continued conversation from the budget last year. So I don't need to see the list again.
Oh, certainly,
more-
yes. Dave and I have been talking about, Dave and Dan and myself, we talk about this quite frequently, and it's been a focus of our budget conversations.
Okay, thank you.
I think that some of that list is in the ad package
Okay.
that was circulated before. I will say at this point, none of it, as far as I know, was funded. And so it's something that we can talk about. But just trying to figure out also with the reorganization if there are, and frankly with a remote work environment, which you brought up, how to sort of pivot rather than assume that we need to replace everything. Are there ways to come out and spend on that future, I guess, right? So like just trying to have that tension or think about that tension too between the way we've done things and the way that likely things will be done.
Right. And I think about it from a point of view of budget risk, right? Because when a critical service fails, you have no choice. You're going to go spend the money, and that's going to be that. And so understanding what our risk is in that area would be good to have. But
Yes.
as long as you're working it and thinking about it, that was really my question. Any other questions? The geeky IT person will always ask IT questions. Okay, city attorney.
You give me a good segue with risk, I guess. So we'll talk about risk mitigation. The big change here is well known that the city attorney, and you'll see the administrative salary is zeroed out, that we have contracted that service rather than having an in-house attorney. The legal services department still exists and is still in this budget, and that includes a paralegal, prosecutor who's part-time, and a code compliance officer. And so those three are the budget at this point. And so in consultation with them, sort of created a budget that helps to work on a couple of different priorities. One being, so in the materials and services, the second line item is code enforcement. It is 510100. That is training and educational development for the code compliance officer. And so trying to increase that or assume that there may be an opportunity for training and development in that manner that has not been available in this last year for COVID reasons. And then the second or the third line beneath that is the nuisance abatement and control. That line item was increased again for those who are interested in variances. That one was increased from even sort of the adopted 2020. That encompasses mitigation measures and specifically dump vouchers are often a mitigation measure used in code compliance cases. And so that, along with, as Denise well knows, the occasional dumpster. And so, just trying to plan ahead, honestly, this is an indication in my mind, or indicative that the types of code compliance that we're seeing and, the potential impacts, or what we expect to be the impacts of the COVID year on folks. And so just the assumption that we may need to have a few extra dump vouchers, which essentially the code compliance officer hands out to those in need in order to help them clean up a mess. And so increase that line item to obviously substantially, but in order to sort of help him be more effective in doing his job. Really other differences, the professional services line item is significantly larger. And I think we mentioned this, but that this is where we are currently estimating, and I will say estimating, our use of the contract attorney. And really, right now, the best we have is to aim high, unfortunately. And this is something that I think the council committee and the council in general had anticipated and was sort of informed to anticipate in the interview process, even with the attorneys that we talked to, that the first year is always going to be high because you're recalibrating. There's a lot of education to happen and work translated and those kinds of things. And so you end up spending more time. And all of the attorneys that we spoke with were billing on an hourly basis. So time is money. And so at some level, that is the 500,000 is what we're anticipating based on the best information we have right now, which is sort of the burn rate, the actuals for the first several months of the contract. I'm not sure that we're going to hit that number, but again, we wanted to be, with everything else we do in this budget, be conservative and aim high on this case, in this case. And so that's the number we've got, and I'm sure we can have some discussion about that. But that's the big ticket item and the big thing. I will say just a little bit more about code compliance, which is that we have one officer who through COVID has tried to minimize his in-person contact with folks for hopefully obvious reasons around contraction of the disease and his own health, but also, is managing 161 cases as last count and increasing. He's often asked by other departments to mitigate or deal with sort of code-related issues that I think fall into a bit of a strange category as to like, is it the code compliance officer's problem or is it the department's problem? And so there's some opportunities, and part of the reason that these staff are reporting to me for the short term is I'd like to figure them out. There are opportunities out there and there are issues and ways to improve our code compliance, ways to improve some of the things that have sort of fallen into a bit of a gap right now. And so right now I'm going to supervise those functions and try and get my arms around them. One of the things that I mentioned earlier in terms of the city recorder function, the code publishing, is also in here in the sense that one of the work products that I would like to see is the city attorney help us do at least an annual revision of the city codes, or at least a portion of the city codes. And so we can kind of target that and do some updates. And I think that that's, to me, a healthy process for the codes, a healthy process for the community to decide what it is that we want to see, yay or nay, in terms of either new language, revision of old language, all of the things. And since those are the laws of the land and the things that we enforce on with neighbors and those kinds of issues, I think it's important that we talk about it. So that's in there.
Okay, questions for Dan?
That's it. Any questions?
Dan, you said have them report to you for now. Where will they go down the road? They have a home?
I think trying to figure that out, honestly, I have not been able to spend a huge amount of brain power on that yet, but I think as we figure it out, it'll probably be somewhere in essentially an administrative services kind of, Kezia, an administrative role. So not per se in those three areas, but probably in the city manager's office still in some ways, just based on my education in learning these roles is they're pretty global.
Okay, awesome. Other questions? Solomon?
So you said that we are expecting that professional service line will decrease in future years?
That's the hope. Yeah. I mean, I think what we're looking at is trying to calibrate and understand, the education piece is something, the work, pent up work demand is one thing. And then, we're trying to look at ways to look for efficiencies in time. And so one of the things that I instituted when we had the separation from the prior attorney was a request for attorney services form. And so every request for attorney services needs a form, explanation as to what you're looking for them to do. And I see it and approve it so that I at least have a sense of what the burn rate is and the topics. And I've only kicked back one so far, but, just trying to hone in a little bit. And so I've had a couple where I've sent them back to refine the message a little bit and be clearer about what the request is. But at the end, essentially of the year, we'll have that list of all the things we've spent, the time it's taken, and certainly won't wait until the end of the year to have that discussion, but to be able to have milestone conversations about, does this need to go forward? Is this something that there can be a template or a different arrangement, or does the department need to have an attorney look at this, or is it more comfort level? So we'll see. I think there are opportunities.
Okay. Other questions? Then I see we have our very own Russ Thomas here to do fleet and facilities. Good evening, Russ.
Good evening, Molly. Good evening, everyone else. And thanks for taking time out of your evenings to spend with us on the wonderful budget, as Rob so eloquently puts it. Talking about fleet services, the fleet services budget is flat from previous years. And actually, I think we're going down a few dollars. But fleet services takes care of approximately 101 pieces of rolling stock, and that's what we call from sedans, pickup trucks to the Vector TV trucks, 10-yard dump trucks, backhoes, anything with wheels that moves. And an additional about 135 small pieces of equipment, 10 emergency generators at various facilities. And in addition to that, approximately 30 vehicles combined from Newberg School District and CPRD. What their purpose is to keep the vehicles running in the best condition they can, safe operating conditions. They maintain all of the police vehicles as well, used to help with some of the fire department vehicles. One of the things that we're learning over the last 3 years is we've transferred the financial responsibility of the repairs back into the departments. So they pay for the repairs. We just provide the personnel and the facilities. We have no growth in FTEs. We currently have 2 people working on the vehicles and equipment, 1.5 out of the fleet services. The other half is funded through the utility services. Majority of their work is done on utility service vehicles. Some of the things that we've been accomplishing over the past couple of years and plan to continue is reducing the age of our fleet. At one point, our fleet average age was about 20 years, which meant we were getting into heavy maintenance and heavy maintenance expenses, transmissions, water pumps, rear ends, things like that cost quite a bit of money to repair. By taking a new program approach and basically flipping the vehicles at the end of their warranty period, what we have discovered is we can recover the residual value of the vehicle. And recently we just did a couple of service trucks that were 7 years old, and found out that it cost us $750 per year to own that vehicle and operate it. That's the cost difference between the residual value and the purchase cost, which everything is done through state contract pricing, and maintenance costs versus a long-term commitment into a vehicle. The second part is they get better gas mileage, they're safer to operate, they're technologically advanced, and that's one of the issues we face with our mechanics. Where you used to be able to take a wrench, a screwdriver, and a pair of gauges and reset the time, dwell, and get the vehicle running, you now have to plug it into a computer. Fortunately, one of our mechanics is certified to work on those, and it's been tremendously advantageous for us to have that capabilities. Just this past year, because of COVID, we were able to negotiate with Ford. Some of the Ford vehicles have the capability of what they call doing a heat soak. We were able to, the local Ford dealership installed it free of charge. And what the officers can do is they can actually increase the heat in the vehicle up to about 135 degrees for 20 minutes. And they determine that it kills not only COVID, but every virus out there. So it helped protect our officers in doing that. And that was part of the work of our fleet maintenance staff that helped do that. The other thing that they concentrate on is our emergency generators. They service our sewage lift stations, our water booster pump stations, the public safety building, as well as our water and wastewater treatment plants. So they're constantly monitoring that. And we really don't have any major changes to the fleet maintenance budget and anticipate continuing on successfully as they've been doing for the past year.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah. Questions? You're too good, Russ. Sorry.
I'll move on to the facilities then. Another component that we have is the facility services, and that is maintaining 7 buildings for the city, which is the library annex, City Hall Records Building, which now has 4 offices in it. The Public Works Maintenance Building that we have, the administrative buildings for the water and wastewater treatment plant. And in addition to that, the parking lots and the Public Works maintenance offices. Over the past few years, we've been working on increasing the maintenance of those buildings. Now, we currently have 2 FTEs that work in there, and it's actually 0.75, I believe. The remaining portions of that's paid out of the enterprise funds, utility funds, because they do maintain quite a bit of the utility buildings with that. This includes the overseeing janitorial services, contractual services, which maintain our HVAC systems. And just to give you a number, on top of the public safety building, there are 17 heat pumps, HVAC units, if you've never been on the roof up there. So that's quite a big task. We have 5 at the library, 2 huge ones on City Hall, in addition to the individual ones around the city buildings. One that's critical is with IT to maintain a constant temperature in the server room. Servers, as you may very well know, don't like heat. And we've had a couple excursions with those and have had to deal with that. In addition to that, they maintain the building envelope, the walls, the floors, windows, doors. We've done replacement of entry doors. We've repainted buildings. We replaced carpets and various other things. Along with that, we do what we call a 5-year advanced planning. We go through the buildings. We take a look at what we anticipate needing to be done, whether it's replacement of HVAC units as they reach the end of their serviceable life, which means their efficiency has gone down to a point that replacing them is much more economical energy-wise and repair-wise than repairing them and continuing to run with them. One of the big ticket items that we have planned for this coming year is the replacement of the 2 HVAC units on top of City Hall. Those 2 units are actually 4 years past their serviceable life, and working with our contractors, we've been able to continue to keep them operating, although their efficiency is rapidly dropping off. Part of the issue that we've run into with COVID is maintaining constant airflows in all the buildings. Even though a lot of the personnel are not there, we still have to maintain that. So the units are running 24/7. We have no option to that. That is a requirement. That shortens the life of the equipment as we do that, no matter how well we take care of those. So we'll be taking a look at replacing those. Part of the other stuff that we look at is we've done some lighting upgrades, switching from fluorescents to LEDs, saving not only the electricity, but as everybody that works in an office that's switched to some of the LEDs, it's much easier on the working environment, working in under the LED lighting. We've done painting, we've done replacements. Recently, we worked with Chief Kosmicki down at the police department for the upgrade in the dispatch center. Once they removed all the equipment, we had failing carpet, and it was determined that we needed to go in there and take care of the building. Our primary focus is to extend the life of the buildings as long as we possibly can, keep them intact and safe to occupy. Recently did also in the public safety building, the seismic upgrade and replace the roof. The roof on the building was at the point of failure, and we actually discovered a couple of potential leaks that fortunately we caught before it got too bad. One other issue that we're working on this year, which we don't really have a number on yet, and that's taking a look at the library atrium. We have a set amount of funds that we set aside, and with this rolling 5-year plan, we prioritize what we're looking at. Some things can get pushed off 2 or 3 years because the priority is not as high or not as important. What we noticed with the atrium, the window wall on the east side of the library is, the moisture turned colors. And with that, we know that something's going on internally. So we've engaged an architectural engineer to investigate that. Once that is done, we'll know, is it an easy fix? Is it a simple fix? Is it a very complicated and expensive fix? The replacement of that window wall and the atrium ceiling, which is all glass and glass structure, is probably in the neighborhood of $300,000 plus. I've talked personally with people that have been involved in that type of operation, and we've discovered that it may be as simple as replacing panels, pulling off the mullions, which is what goes around the windows, and resetting that. It may be more entailed, but the architectural engineer has engaged a building envelope specialist, and once they get in, can take a look at it, we'll have an idea exactly what's going on, what the projected cost would be, the fix would be. We've asked them for several alternatives and how to solve the problem to stop the leakage and deterioration of the structure. Once we do that, we'll determine a course of action and move forward. I'm working very closely with Will Worthy at the library to continue working on that. At this point, we're still waiting on the architectural engineer and the building envelope specialist to finish their investigation of that, which we hope to have done by the end of June with that. Again, our budget stays very flat. Some of the numbers you may have seen that are directly COVID related. And these are issues that we've been facing over the past year, and we anticipate facing them again, is we've had increased costs in supplies. And again, this is hand sanitizers, this is sanitizing wipes, barriers to keep staff and patrons safe. We've had increased in utilities. We're running the HVAC units 24/7. which increases utilities. Another reason to have more efficient equipment put on the buildings. We've had increases in some of the building repairs associated with COVID, trying to mitigate some other things that are going on, and janitorial services. We've actually, since we've reoccupied some of the buildings after being quite so remote, we've upped the service level with the our janitorial services. Not only do they clean, they disinfect. And some of the costs we've had in there, we've actually gone in and fogged. Anybody that's been around COVID, we've gone in and fogged more than once several of the city buildings. And in doing so, our facility maintenance personnel followed our contractor the first couple of times. We then bought the equipment and they got trained on the job and now are capable of doing it themselves. So our priorities is maintaining the buildings in the best shape possible, providing a good, safe working environment for employees and for those visitors to our buildings, and reducing expenses as best we can. I think we've done a very good job, and we look forward to continued successes in that field as well. So if there are any questions concerning the facilities.
Greg, did you get your question answered about the library that came up last time? I think there he is.
Yes, thank you.
Great, good. Thank you, Russ.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you for putting lights up on your buildings. There you go. Okay, off to Chief Kosmicki and civil forfeiture and a couple of other things.
Well, I know we're not probably supposed to bring this up, but a little shout out to Russ's crew. They do a great job of keeping all the facilities running. There's not a lot of recognition there, but they do a really wonderful job with, like I said, take care of us all. So with that, I'll begin on Fund 3. The Civil Forfeiture Fund was established to budget and account for occasional receipt of criminal assets received through activities of the police department. These assets are legally required to be separately tracked and used to support law enforcement activities. It depends on what kind of forfeiture you have as far as what the rules and laws are. Some things you can use for, say, buy money, other things you can use for equipment. You just have to follow those rules. And that's really all there is about Fund 3. Does anyone have, or Molly, am I supposed to ask if anyone has questions? You're muted.
The mouse is supposed to do what I mean, not what I do. Please, yes, ask at the end of a section. That way we'll know you're done, and then I'll bug people to come off mute.
Does anybody have any questions about Fund 3? It's not a very exciting fund.
Go get more. It's nice.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that, but we'll try. So moving to Fund 13, the 911 Police Communications Fund. As you can see, it's a cell phone tax. I believe there was discussion that a lot of people were dropping their landlines or home phones, is what they, and with the invention or increase in cell phone usage, that 911 fund was not keeping up. So they established additional tax for cell phones. And they're collecting January 1st, 2021, they started collecting $1.25 in taxes. And that money is supposed to go directly to the 911 systems throughout the state. Do you have any questions on that? Fund 13?
Okay. Oh, sorry, Mike.
So on the 911 funds that are collected, you said it goes to the state, and then the state then breaks it out to the cities based on how big the population base is that's how it works?
I'm not sure exactly what their criteria is. Rob has his hand up, so he looks like he knows exactly.
Well, maybe not exactly, but it's, as I mentioned during the state shared revenues public hearing, these are part of those state shared revenues, and these are shared on a per capita basis based on where those 911 comm centers are.
And that fund pays for 2 of our dispatchers. So Fund 16 is the public safety fee fund. It's both police officers or patrol and communications. The public safety fee of $3 was established and supported overwhelmingly in 2009. That was put out to the voters. The purpose was to fund 3 additional officers, which was to be 35 officers. The fund represents additional funding for the same, the police department. And those funds are restricted. They can only be used for the police department. They're generated fees and attached to municipal services. And it is $3 a month per water meter. There are other ones that are larger for larger water meters. And that fund, I'm told, is currently not keeping up with the cost of the officers. So I think it's paying for about, Rob, is it paying for 2.5?
All right, get to my unmute button. Yeah, it was, we were down to 2.5. We have proposed in this budget that pay for 3 FTE. You'll see that there is a proposed increase in the public safety fee budgeted for 21-22.
To get back to 3?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So typically what we've done too in the past is our newest or lowest paid officers, we've rotated through there. So if someone, if we hire a new officer, obviously typically they get paid less. So we stick them in that fund. So we rotate them. We have rotated them to hopefully keep the life of the fund as much as possible. Which brings me to the communications portion of Fund 16. That is a $2 fee, or that started off as a $2 fee, but that had a cost elevator or an inflation elevator. That one was created in 2014, and that the purpose behind that was also to fund 2 communications officers or 2 911 dispatchers. And that is also restricted. That has to go to directly to dispatch. And like I said earlier, that has an inflationary index that's built into it. Any questions on Fund 16?
Sounds like you're batting 1,000, Jeff. Thank you. All right, then we will move on to Fund 8, Building Inspection, and Doug Rux.
Good evening, everyone. So Fund 8 is our building inspection fund. This is the fund that addresses all of the reviews for new development. So we do the plan reviews, and we do all of the building inspections, and then all the records management for all of the building records themselves. We also provide third-party services to the cities of Dundee, Dayton, and Lafayette under a contract that we've had in place since 2009. This has 3 components of it. So we have the revenues, personal services, and the materials and services. If you take out our beginning fund balance and this one-time transfer in from Fund 32, we're actually projecting or proposing a slight reduction in revenue in the building fund. And this came up last week when we were talking about the planning funds, reduced development. We're not seeing any new big commercial projects in the course of the next year. And right now we're not seeing any new residential subdivisions that are being proposed. So it's pretty much status quo in that regards. In the personnel services, in this one, the one change from the current fiscal year is we have a contract building inspector, and that position has been moved down under professional services. We did have a reduction slightly this fiscal year. We had a transition. We had a plans examiner who left, and so we had to go through the recruitment process and bring on a new one. So that's why our projected numbers, aren't exactly tracking along with what our budget numbers are because we were down for several months without a plans examiner. But fortunately, we had a third-party contract and was able to do that backfill. Under the materials and services, again, it's pretty much a status quo. The slight variations that are occurring, again, is in the bank fees. And we talked about this in the planning side. A lot of transactions with COVID are being done with credit cards. And so they're being electronically done instead of people coming in and writing checks. And so we're seeing a big increase in that this year. And we're projecting to kind of match what we're projecting for this particular fiscal year. Again, down in professional services, we do budget money every year for those third-party services. So if we get, I'll use the word, a little overwhelmed with the number of applications that come in, or if I have people who are out for an extended period of time, we have a third party who can come in and do our plan reviews for us and also backfill in on our inspections. And as I mentioned earlier, is that our contract plumbing inspector, which is about a 0.34 FTE time, has been moved down into that professional services. I know like one of the questions in the narrative I put in is that for the DEI, we have budgeted money for training for 2 of the building staff member. And there's a total of 4.05 FTE in the building fund. Any questions?
Can I ask a question on behalf of the mayor who just got here? But I would be loath to let the opportunity go by to not mention the school district bond and our preparation there and give you the opportunity to talk about that.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So yes, so the school district passed their $140 million bond. So there's going to be a lot of retrofit work done to existing school facilities over the next several years. In Dundee, they're looking at building a new elementary school. And since we do the contract services for that, we're going to be involved. We also do the planning services for Dundee, so we'll be involved in that one. As the school district has worked with their architect, which is Brick, we are actually having a meeting Thursday morning, our first kickoff meeting on coordination on all of those projects, because within the school district, all but one of the schools, actually, Newberg would provide building services for those retrofits and remodels. The only one we do not would be Ewing Young, and that's handled through Yamhill County. So there's going to be a push for work coming forward to us, and probably, starting sometime in fiscal year 21-22, until I have the meeting with the school district, we start to understand what their schedule and so forth will be. We may have to make some adjustments as we go through fiscal year 21-22. Any other questions?
Okay. They're not shy, so I'm assuming no. On to the Economic Development Fund.
Okay, so this is Fund 14. Fund 14 is a little bit unique. It has 3 different elements to it. So it is our Economic Development Fund. This was a fund that was established based upon a community development block grant the city received a number of decades ago, $440,000. And so it's broken in, and we have some beginning fund balances for 3 different elements: for the economic development, for Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and for a construction excise tax. And so in this budget, under the I'll stop at the revenues. We are applying for a community development block grant for $500,000, and that is to do repairs to manufactured homes. This is a program we did several years ago when we got a CDBG grant through the state of Oregon. We also will have a full year worth of the construction excise tax revenue. And so we're looking at $300,000 of that revenue coming in fiscal year 21-22. So that's basically predicated on 100 single family homes at $3,000 a home. As Rob had mentioned, is that in Fund 31, the economic health manager position is being moved over into Fund 14. And then we moved the business license portion of Fund 14 out, and that's back in the general fund. So what you see now is basically our economic health manager position. So there is a transfer in from the general fund into this fund, plus there is a proposed increase in our business license. And so that would be a 50% increase. So a business license would go from $50 to $75, and a home occupation would go from $25 to $37.50 in the proposal. So we have materials and services for the Economic Development Fund. There is maintenance, and that's our Track It permit software system that we contribute to, and then dues and meetings, and that is memberships, and we have in different organizations such as the Oregon Economic Development Association and Strategic Economic Development Corporation, and several others. Then we have the affordable housing component of this. So this was the trust fund that was set up. What happened is the city council in the past took a portion of the economic development money and moved that over and created this trust fund. So we have some materials and services, which are pretty nominal. There are some loan fees because we do loans out of that. And we have a third party through the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments who does our loan underwriting for us. And then that comes back and goes to the city council for approval. We are not proposing any professional service expenditures for affordable housing. In the past, from time to time, we've contracted with the Council of Governments again to provide some assistance. Then the third piece of this fund is the construction excise tax. And so this was adopted in November of 2020. We started implementation in January 2nd of 2021. So the housing planner position is partially paid out of this fund. The balance comes out of the general fund. And so there's 4% of the revenue that's collected for the construction excise tax that can go towards administration. So Rob has diligently worked with me in all of my questions and to try to hone that 4% down as close as we could get to make sure that we had that split done correctly. Then we have special payments. And these are the various loans and so forth that we have. So we have $350,000 in economic development loans that we can do. And that comes out of that original allocation from CDBG. We have the Housing Trust Fund, and it's all prescribed by a resolution and the percentages of what needs to be spent on different programs. And those are outlined in your budget proposal. Then the CET, again, it has to be broken into 3 separate pieces. A portion of it goes back to the state for Oregon Housing and Community Services. The balance of it stays with the city. And we can use that to partner with developers to generate affordable housing units, which are 80% or less of median family income. So we can partner with investing directly into units. We could use funds to write down SDC costs. So we can have a little bit of creativity of how we can try to address housing affordability. And we're no longer, since we've purchased the software system, this fund no longer has to pay towards the purchase of that software. That terminates at the end of this fiscal year. And then we have a little bit of contingency in each of those segments. Questions?
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Then the last fund we have is the Transient Lodging Tax Fund, which is Fund 19. We've spent time having conversations internally given COVID, and we know we went through the lockdowns, the hotels were closed or significantly reduced in their overnight stays. So what we're looking at for 21-22 is the same revenue amount that we are projecting for 2020, 2021. So it's basically, it's flat. On the expense side, on the materials and services, we're working on a contract with the chamber on the visitor center. And so where that was $75,000 this year, is proposed to go down to $30,000 in 21-22. And the corollary to that is that the Taste Newberg allocation would slightly go up. And so that's projected a little over $186,000 for next fiscal year. There's $30,000 from a grant program that we had established in this. And so we had done a grant award to Wolves and People. They did not move forward with that particular project. And so prior council, we terminated that grant award, and that money is sitting there, and the city council will need to have a conversation at some point in the future of what they would like to do with that $30,000 to address tourism activities. And we have a small contingency. Again, you can't get this down to the exact number. So we've got a little under a $1,300 contingency identified in that fund. Any questions on that one?
Doug, what's the term of the contract for the visitor center with the chamber?
Be a one-year contract.
Okay, thanks. Mike, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted a quick question on the business license fees. What do they specifically go for?
The business license fees would go towards portion of the salary and benefits for the economic health manager position.
And what do we get for that? What does that position do for us?
Dan?
So, I think the idea is to try to link that position and the benefit of being the business liaison and supporting the businesses with the folks that the position supports. And so right now there really isn't any what you get for it in essence. You are required to, or you're expected to have one. I guess not always required, but we hope that you have a business license. And now we're building more service into that. And so, the position has worked on COVID relief and helping folks with applications to state and federal programs, to sharing information on some of those programmatic things, working on the Newberg economic development strategy, and managing that program implementation of various things that should support businesses, and whether specifically or just the ecosystem for businesses in Newberg, things like that. And so that's why the effort to tie those two things together.
I think I would also add in that, Dan, is the business retention expansion program. So working with our local companies who are having needs to expand, and we're working with them to try and find new locations. And then we also have the business recruitment and so forth, is those coordination efforts with the mill site owner and trying to attract new investment within the riverfront.
Okay, other questions?
Like Elise is going.
Hi, this is probably a question that I don't know enough and I'm getting dangerous here. So with the $30,000 that's sitting from the Wolves and Peoples grant, is that possible to just take those funds and pay the for the visitor center with those funds, and put CLT funds out of the visitor center?
That would be a conversation that the council needs to have.
I mean, legally.
Yes, the money is there for tourism activities.
Okay.
The way the council left that when the grant was terminated is that the council needed to come back and decide what they wanted to do with that $30,000.
Yeah, and then we just didn't come back. I think okay. So
I think that was Patrick's idea.
Yeah,
Yep.
Patrick left. Gosh dang it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Doug? All right, then on to street funds. We're back with Russ. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
And thanks for welcoming me back. Sue, I know Karin is waiting in the wings as well. So I've asked our city engineer, Karin Hoffman, to also be here. So we're going to tag team you a little bit. She has some expertise in our capital projects and other areas, and she'll be helping out with that. We've gotten a little slideshow for you too, to give you something to read while I talk or Karin talks. And so we don't have to touch bases on everything else. Next slide, please. So one of the things that is common to all of the public works funds is what you see on here. Has been talked about previously. Bank fees are higher. Credit card payment use is has increased dramatically. So in our budgets, we've accounted for that. Engineering contractual services have increased a little bit. We've got a lot of programs and projects going on currently, and dealing with professional service contracts with consulting engineers. So that's increased a little bit. We're also going to getting prepared to go into another rate review cycle. So we've accounted for that, and that's accounted for through all of the street and other utility funds. Fund 32, as Rob had mentioned earlier, there's been transfers back into the utility funds out of Fund 32, and I think he's going to talk more about that later. We've had increased costs for remote meetings. We're all on Zoom today. And we've been using Zoom, GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams, all of that to conduct our meetings remotely because of COVID, with our consulting engineers, with constituents, with customers throughout the city at various times. And so those costs have gone up. GIS mapping touches on not only the utility funds, the street funds, but throughout the entire organization. It helps support police mapping in their dispatch center. It helps support the development activities that Doug has got going on in the community development department. So it works through that. It also is attached to our Cartograph OMS asset management system. One of the things that we've been working on for years is we really don't have an accurate accounting of all of our assets and what the costs associated with maintaining or replacement of those are. And so a couple of years ago, we started down the path of upgrading our Cartograph Navigator, which was a very rudimentary system, into a very user-friendly Cartograph OMS asset management system. It's in our water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, being used by our maintenance staff. It's being used by engineering. We can do the road condition indexes, what's the rating of the roads. They're doing it for facility maintenance management. And as we build this out and collect the data, we'll have more information on what the true costs are and asset tracking throughout our entire system. And we track it right down to a street sign is more than one asset. It's every blade that's on that post, the post itself, its location, when we replaced it, did it get hit? Did we have to do a bill back to a vehicle that got hit? Working with the police department for a report. Every component of the water, wastewater, storm system, street system is an asset that's in there, from the manhole to the manhole tile, to the invert elevations, to the pipe between manholes. So we're accounting for everything and we're tracking all of that. It takes time to build the data library and to build out that information, but we're working on it. Again, Cartograph is throughout our entire system. We're using it as we read meters, and it's connected through the financial department for the municipal statement building. So this is something that works through all of our budgets. What you will see is we don't have any significant increases in the proposed budget lines for street, water, sewer, storm, other than projects. And that's accumulation of many years of planning, getting ready for these projects, and they've all come to fruition at the same time, and working with community development as they plan for the riverfront project and the urban renewal. So these are common themes throughout all of our budgets. Next slide, please.
Hey, Russ, I just want to interject, and I should have done this before you started, so I apologize.
That's all right.
We will have to adjourn in 6 minutes. And so I don't get to where you can get to, and then we will pick up again on Thursday, just so you know.
Well, I think if we get into the street and we're going to have the CIP tied into it at the same time, street projects, this might be a good point to stop, because they do intertie a little
I
bit
wondered.
if you're interested in that, but I can try and push through and get through just the street operational funds, and then we can pick up at that point.
I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll do that. The street fund comprises our engineering division and our maintenance division. And the primary purpose of the street fund is to maintain our streets. Now, the street fund is funded out of gas tax that was talked about previously. Our capital projects are funded through the transportation utility fee, or TUF, one of the many acronyms that we use with that. We have 72 miles of paved, 4 miles of gravel that we have to maintain, and everything associated with that. Also the maintenance of outside the pavement on state highways. ODOT maintains Highway 219, 99W, and 240 to the edge of pavement. And that's as far as they go, even though it's ODOT right of way. So we have to do maintenance of sidewalks, curbs, ADA ramps, things of that nature. A couple of the highlights that we're looking at out of our street fund this year is we're doing a street lighting LED upgrade. If you go out in the street and you take a look at the street light and it's kind of orange, that's high pressure sodium, 75 to 150 watts. If you look at it and it's a kind of a blinding light, but it's not an LED, those are metal halide and they're 150 to 250 watts. So if you relate to your home energy bill, that's a cost. Converting to LEDs, they're 22 to 23 watts, and they have a 25-year lifespan. And true color rendition. If you've been in areas of Tualatin or some of the other cities around us that have switched, you can tell that. The biggest thing is our power costs would go down when completed to about $70,000 annually. We currently have a budget of about $280,000 to pay for energy costs, and we have $30,000 to pay for replacement of failed Cobra lights or lighting fixtures. Currently, our lights are on what PG refers to as a Schedule A, Schedule B, or Schedule C. Schedule A, we own them, we have to maintain them, we pay for the fixes on them, and we pay them for electricity. Schedule B is we own them, but they maintain them, and we pay them to maintain them. And Schedule C is they own them. We're not lighting experts. We don't have linemen. We don't have the training and necessary personnel, which would be expensive to do that. So we have to hire an outside contractor. So we have expenses of about $30,000 a year to repair our very own. That would also go down. So we're looking at the potential of over $100,000 per year savings in the street fund alone to do that. So that's something we're working on. Implementation of the sidewalk and grant program. We did Memorial Park this past year, provided not only sidewalks, but access for those that have mobility issues. Our next project that we're taking a look at is Scott Lovett Park. In addition to that, the maintenance division is also working on the downtown core area to improve the accessibility across city right-of-way, the alleys. They've done a couple of improvements down there as well. The grant program, we've already completed one that I know of. We've got a couple others in the works, and the grant is for homeowners to replace and upgrade their sidewalks, bring them into compliance, and provide a safe walking surface for that. What we've decided to do is, because of the expense of the accessible ramps, the ADA ramps, we decided to not put that burden on the homeowners and take that on ourselves. They're also very specialized. You have to meet very special criteria when those go in, and sometimes it's very difficult for the homeowner or common concrete contractors to put those in. Our program consists of the maintenance of the street, and that includes striping, pavement striping. We contract with Marion County. Marion County does all of the striping for the entire Region 2 of ODOT, which is everything from Detroit to Astoria. Costs are going up with that. Material costs are going up across the board for everything. Redoing the pavement markings, which is sidewalks, maintaining or crosswalks, maintaining safe crosswalks. We also have signs. We've got the warning signs for school zones that we have to maintain, street signs that we have to maintain. We've updated most of the street signs to meet the standardization of the street names. First Street is spelled out, not a number. So to meet the GIS and be able to track that with our asset management, we've done that as well. Spot repairs for asphalt. Everybody loves the potholes when you hit them. You love it when you're able to miss them. We have limited funds, but we're doing spot repairs and trying to do that. That's where the tough comes in and supports that. Roadside mowing, with the addition of the bypass, we've gained a lot of ground to mow under the bypass. It's ODOT right away, but they're not going to take care of it. And most of it borders on residential neighborhoods to keep it safe for people to transit through the area. Not only that, but to remove the fire danger that occurs when the grass gets 3 feet tall and dries out. So there's a lot that goes into it. The maintenance of the gravel roads, dust control. We put down a dust control agent once a year. We try to do it as late as we can. This year is unusually dry, as everybody's currently aware. So we've been trying to water them down a little bit to provide some livability for those folks that are on gravel roads. The cost to upgrade the gravel road is prohibitive for those residents in those areas, as we'd have to form an LID, and the cost is with sidewalks, curbs, and what we're required to do by state law. The addition of bike lanes, that is a requirement. Sidewalks, ADA ramps, that's another requirement. So it drives the cost of reconstruction of a block of gravel road well over $200,000 to $300,000, depending on what goes on. And then we have the additional costs of preparing the utilities underground, because if we do that, we don't want to go dig it up while the asphalt's hot and make a repair on a line. So to take care of that.
Russ, I'm
Yes.
going to ask you to go ahead and just make
Wrap
a
up.
good stopping point, and then we'll recess and start again on Thursday.
Well, thank you for your time. That's the primary areas that we deal in addition to snow and ice. The infrequent occurrence of that and dealing with that and working with ODOT as well. Any questions on the operational aspect of the street fund?
Rick?
Good evening. Sorry I was late. First off, Russ, this is probably more a question, not so much for tonight or even the maintenance, but it's going to probably be for the meeting on Thursday. And here's the question. Given the incredible volatility in the cost of all materials presently, how are you projecting in any way what you're likely to see with the projects? You don't have to answer it now, but when we're seeing 100, 200% increase in things like steel, et cetera. And the other question is, why is this then a good time to do a whole bunch of capital projects if it's so volatile? So that's the question. The only other comment I have is that on your notes of changing the lights, that energy reduction really underscores council goal for sustainability. So we give bonus points for that one. So there you go. So anyway, so that's what I got. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions or hints for Russ for Thursday? Well, thank you all for hanging in there, presenters as well as committee, and we will recess and rejoin on Thursday. Thanks so much. Night.